Hello, and welcome everybody. This is Bisu Dagger on the microphone, and I am casting the MBC Survivor 8th MSL. This is 2006. The exact date is going to be May 23rd. Bisu versus Silver at 8:15. That's not a date. That's actually a map name. This is 8:15 the 3rd. And we are going to be watching Bisu versus Silver on this match again. This is the first MSL that Bisu is going to be ever competing in. So it should be really exciting to see how well he's going to do in his first MSL. Will he compete fine? Will he go for that Royal Road as a Protoss player? Well, it's not quite the fall, so he's not going to have the Legend of the Fall for him in this one either. But Silver, I'm sure he's going to be a formidable opponent here, and this is going to be just another famous PVZ as we see these two players go at it. It looks like this is going to be a 4-player map. Not too familiar with 815 itself, as 2006 was quite a long time ago. But as we look upon here, we see the Pantech player Silver sitting over here on the left side of the booths, and Bisu sitting up here on the right. Now, there's actually not a soundproof booth around these two players. Just note that. It's more of like an open style seating, and hopefully they can't hear the fans too loud between their headphones. Of course, if the Zerg player decided to go for 4-pull and all the fans started cheering, then it might tip Bisu off. So now as we look at this MBC Survivor League that we're watching right now, what is Bisu going to be going for here? It looks like he's just putting a pylon inside of his main base, not going for a faster expansion of any sort. Wants to make sure he can just continue with those probes, nothing proxied yet. So the pylon set down inside of his main. Looks like he's probably just going to go for a gateway or two before he finally gets outside of his base here. And actually sending a probe over, probably to drop the gateway first and then go off onto its scout. And that's exactly what Bisu's doing. Meanwhile, the Overlord for the Zerg player Silver is heading towards the left, and he will be slow to scout out his opponent, but never fear, he has an additional Overlord to send down to the bottom right, so that way he can figure out exactly where Bisu is located. Silver dropping down the pool, so he is going to be going over pool before hatchery too, and now he's going to be at least up to 12 hefty drones at this point in the game. So 2 gates do drop down for Bisu, and this is pretty standard PVZ. The 2 gates will allow a lot of pressure too. Generally, you can go with a 1 gate, at least early on. Get 2 Zealots to block the ramp while you try and go up with your tech. Get that Assimilator and start going for, either Reavers or High Templars pretty early off 1 base. Players actually do that. But on the other end, we do have this spawning pool. We'll be finishing up very shortly. And where is that additional hatchery going to lay out? It looks like there is an expansion towards the more like the 2 o'clock position here. And that's definitely an opportunity to build a hatchery over there and expand as a Zerg player where you want to stay ahead on your basis. So it looks like Silver's got the game plan down. He's dropping the hatchery there, and he will have that necessary larva production. Now, I don't see a gas yet for the Zerg player, so generally, if you're going to go for a 2-base Spire Tech type play to pressure your Protoss opponent, you're going to get that extractor earlier on because it takes so long to get your gas. Even with that expansion up there, 2 gases this late in the game is not going to, bode well for some sort of early two-base Spire type play. So the Zealot is going to have to get kited back here and try and throw down some damage on these Zerglings, but 3 are going to be enough to clean up that Zealot, and 4 is just going to be absolutely ample. But 3 Zealots come back in to retaliate and push those Zerglings back, and they do retreat. Oh, but the scouting probe does get taken out. Bisu not taking care to find out everything his opponent is doing, but speed was done on those Zerglings. You could tell that they were looking pretty fast. And with that being said, they would have picked off that probe anyway, no matter how careful he was. So a couple drones are being transferred over to this hatchery at the time here. Probably 1 for static defense, 1 for mining. But usually you want to see more drones transferred because you want to mine optimally at both bases. But 2 Zealots here, 2 more do follow in along with an additional probe here. And here's that heavy pressure off the 2 gates that I was talking about, allowing Bisu to get that pressure on top of the natural base. But very smart, instead of going for mining at the natural where he might have to pull drones, he's going to maintain mining inside of the main base and go for 2 static defenses. 2 sunken colonies may be a little bit on the overkill side, but definitely going to keep him safe against the 2 gate. Meanwhile, Bisu behind this, he doesn't have a gas yet. He's got an expansion, it looks like, on the way, though. So at least he will be able to take up 2 gases pretty quickly. But he can't go for tech buildings, or tech units. Even if he does build a cybernetics core, he does not have the gas to build Dragoons. So he's really just stuck on the 2-gate Zealot for quite a while now. Meanwhile, Silver, because he didn't take his gas very quickly either, both these players are doing pretty decent on tech. So actually, Bisu decides to take his Nexus all the way at the bottom left side of the base instead of in his natural location. And that natural location would be around the 6 o'clock positioning here, right at the bottom of that ramp. So this is going to be very unfortunate for Bisu, who is going to be severely behind in economy if he cannot bust out and effectively take an additional Nexus here. I think he should, as soon as it got scouted out, have canceled off that Nexus at the bottom left. But he has 2 Zealots at the top, and 2 Zerglings are kiting at the top also. So this is going to be a dire situation, as the Lings can attack from both sides on top of that ramp and do a sandwich, hopefully picking off those units that are blocking the ramp and allowing him to take down that Nexus. Now it looks like there's going to be a pylon at the top here too, and I wonder if Bisu's going to try and cannon off the top here, because he's really mineral heavy right now. He does have probes, probe production constantly going inside of his main base. So since he doesn't have gas, it can only go to cannons here. A lot of Zerglings do go down, and a nice block by Bisu to hold that ramp so far. So it looks like everything might pay off, and he might be able to hold on to his second base at that 7 o'clock location. So meanwhile, there's a little bit of a mix-up inside of that main base for Silver, who had to deal with some Zealot aggression, and he was able to kill it off with just drones. So really nice round by Silver so far, and he's playing quite well. So now, what is this building that is going down? I actually missed a tech as I looked away from my screen for quite a second here. I have to wait to see. It's probably, it could be another hatchery inside of his base, but it could also be a Hydralisk den here too. So a Stargate is going to be underway. And while Ser DT, or just even going for Sers, isn't completely 100% same thing in 2006 for Protoss players, it was something that became a lot more popular, is to get those Corsairs for scouting and doing damage in the air. So that that Nexus is just hanging in there. The Lings did not get any more damage done again. And if you think about the amount of Lings that that Silver has been producing to try and take down that base at the bottom left, it's put him really far behind in the drone production. He doesn't have a 3rd base taken yet. And yes, that was a Hydralisk den built inside of the main base. So he is mining from a gas at his main base, but there is no gas at his natural. And so I think that's exactly why Bisu didn't take the natural base on this map, realizing that 815 is a very hard natural to take, because you really need that extra gas, or you know, for 2 base Protoss to be effective against a Zerg opponent. Meanwhile, Zerg, it's a much easier map to deal with here, even if you don't have a gas at your natural, because standard Zerg play is to take 3 bases pretty quickly to keep up with the 2 base Protoss. And now the Sers are out. Probably not going to get too much damage done. The Hydralisk den is done, so he can defend at different locations here. But the Sers are definitely going to apply pressure on those Overlords. And Silver's going to have to divert a lot of attention to keeping those Overlords alive, putting the Hydralisk in place while focusing on economy. So that's quite a bit to have on his hand at one time. There's 3 different things just 3 major tasks that he has to worry about right now, on top of those menial tasks of constantly keeping the drones to mine and making sure that he keeps his food supply ahead. Just all those standard little things combined with those 3 major things is going to be taxing on a player. So how well can Silver hold up? Bisu, his multitasking has been pretty decent so far by using his Zealots to protect at both locations. It's been quite impressive that he managed to keep that Nexus alive. I still think, though, he is behind on getting that additional assimilator, and it's really nice to have that additional gas for the Protoss player once you want to transition into High Templar tech, which is pretty much the way to go. 3 bases have been established for Silver, and he has the opportunity now to start going for Lurker tech. And without observers on the map, Bisu can only rely on cannons. While there are 3 cannons at both main base locations where you can sit on top of that ramp and defend against the Lurkers, drop lurkers could definitely be something that's threatening Bisu in the coming time. But as long as he does have these Corsairs alive to kind of maintain map control, at least he can scout out if Overlords decide to get speed and go for drop and drop lurkers instead of the base. But there is a decent amount of space behind that main mineral line for Bisu's mineral area, where you can basically run lurkers in. Once you drop them on top of the high cliff, you can run them in right behind that line and kill off a ton of probes really quickly here. But this is looking like a high ratio of Hydralisk instead, and I don't know which base that Silver's kind of looking forward to try and pick off here. Oh, and here comes a ton of damage on top of these Overlords from the Corsairs. Only 2 though, and Bisu's just constantly prodding at them, which is a really good thing to do as a Protoss player. He's severely contained inside of his base though, but making it up this ramp would be really hard, especially if Bisu had a Dark Templar or High Templar even. Either way, he doesn't have any of those high tier gateway units available to him, and he might have to let these. He's gonna have to let the Hydralisks up the ramp, because basically he can't kill off the Hydralisks, and they can constantly attack the Zealots as they try and run down and block it. Instead, he's going to have to let all the Hydralisks get up here now and try and go for a surround with the Zealots at this time. But the gateways are actually putting him at a severe disadvantage here, and constant Hydralisk production off these 3 bases is going to be quite a difficult task to deal with for Bisu. But he's holding on here. The Citadel of Dune is finished. The leg enhancements are done, and now the Zealots are at full maximum speed. They've got their Nike sneakers on, and they have just completely mowed down that Hydralisk force that was up the ramp. Now Bisu's going to have to play that cat and mouse game again, as he has to let the Hydralisk get inside of his main base. It's kind of a weird concept. So Silver looking like he's on 4 bases, and he realizes that now if he does get up that ramp, that it's going to put him in a really bad position. So the thing that he can do is camp at the bottom. Meanwhile, a side group of Zealots that cache over at the left side with production facilities is going to be really bad, a really deathly force moving over to that 4 o'clock base. But it looks like with the static defenses and the Hydralisk, he should be able to fight this off. Way too many sunken colonies, and Bisu immediately realizes he does have to pull his Zealots back, and a Spire is on its way. 2 Spires are on the... Okay, I thought he had 2 Spires on the way. Okay, so he does have 1 Spire finished up here, and 2 more sunken colonies that are going to be going down very shortly here. But is he going to be going off of 2 gases into Mutaplay? It looks like he does go for that, realizing that the one weakness that Bisu has right now is that he has an overabundance of Zealots, but Zealots don't die easily to Mutalisks. A lot of damage could get done with these Zealots, and in fact he could cripple the economy before they are able to get cleaned up. The Hydralisks, the drones, the Sunkens, all in tangent together, trying to take down this ground force that Bisu has moved out with. A ton of Hydralisks comes in from the left side too, and Bisu's going to have to focus his tasking on taking down the Hydralisk forces before he can focus on buildings, or else his army will be completely in shambles, and I don't know that he can re-macro quick enough. But tons of damage again on these static forces, having trouble getting here to these Hydralisks on the back, but the Mutas are just growing and growing in numbers, and slowly are going to be tearing down the Zealot forces here. So what does Bisu do in response to this? Because it looks like it is going to be cleaned up eventually here. And does he go for Corsairs out of his Stargate? Does he try and get faster Archons to move in with his Zealot Archon style push, which is completely viable here? But right now, he needs to have a solution for the amount of Mutas that are out here, and Scourge are chasing things down too. But the Spire, it goes away. So that was his one solution here. Even though he might lose more Zealots, focused on that Spire. An incredible move here. He actually manages to take out the hatchery at the natural base. So we are 15 minutes into the game so far. An incredible game back and forth between Silver and Bisu. But Bisu may have done the necessary damage to allow him to take an advantage in this game. And it looks like the shuttle has finished up. Corsairs are reinforced over at the main base too, so he can come in from the left. 3 of them would be able to clean this up too in tangent with that cannon. So it looks like that Batwing force is going to be pushed back towards the natural base of Silver, as he's going to have to hang in here. And this is the opportunity as the Zerg player. You're going to need to take an additional base again. Constantly, as you reach these, it's almost like every 5 minutes you need to take an additional base. And so now he is actually taking back up his 4th again. But where does a Zerg player take his 5th base? It looks like there might be some sort of like... okay, so there is a mineral location at close to the 12 and close to the 6 for both players where they could actually get a gas and a mineral expansion here. And I think that'd be a really good location for Silver to take right now. But I think he's constantly worried about getting his static defenses down and dealing with these ground forces of the Zealots here. That's a lot of Corsairs, though. And behind this, you can see that Lurkers are being built, finally morphed in here to defend. And Lurkers are so much more effective at defending here. And Bisu, as I mentioned, you know, almost 10 minutes earlier now, he doesn't have observers out. And so that could be a huge issue for him. He does have the robotics facility finished up. He did build a shuttle, but where is the stage of his observatory right now? Is it finished up? Can he actually go for observer? Okay, so he does have the observatory inside of his main base. That's good to know. But this may be his first observer that he can send out on the map. And finally, 16 minutes in the game, we see the first Templar archives. And we all know from standard Bisu that we are used to seeing that Templar archives come into play a lot quicker here. And finally the drops come into play too. So the Lurkers, as I said, should be able to move towards the back, and we're skirting right around that Citadel of Adun. That triple spike damage coming up from the ground, and Bisu actually has already moved most of his probes away. And in fact, the mining isn't really heavy right there anyway. This drop may have better been paid off if he went for the main base over at the 7 o'clock instead of the 5 o'clock base, because there's a lot more probes, a lot fresher mineral lines, and that's really where you want to stop the economy from functioning. But a nice move in from Silver, and that did some decent damage to Bisu's economy, forcing his army back to also defend. And now you can see that there is absolutely no Bisu on the top half of the map. So things are painting out really well for Silver as he's kind of grabbing himself back into this game. Constant reproductions of these Hydralisks that he lost earlier in the game, trying to pressure over at that main base. And now there's basically the calm before the storm right now. The only thing that Silver has to constantly watch are those Corsairs, and that is in great numbers now. He's reached about 7 or 8, and that will pretty much take down any Mutaforce available. And Bisu also scouted out that there is no base at the 12 o'clock location here for the Zerg opponent to take. I am pretty sure that the 6 and 12 are island expansions, and that is pretty cool. It's going to be hard for either player to pressure those 6 and 12 o'clock locations, since they are on this high ground where you have to drop into it. Bisu, he's finished up his Nexus over at the 6. He was able to drop in a probe over there with his shuttle, and it looks like the Overlords are just paving their way down towards the bottom of the map now. And what kind of damage is this push going to do? Meanwhile, Corsairs are going to be catering to this shuttle that should have High Templars inside of it. And now, are we going to see any storms from Bisu? He's got to have some storms right now. That's a lot of Hydralisks that are dying, that are killing off the Zealots very quickly here. And not even morphing into Archon, still waiting for those crucial storms, which could do 10-folds of damage if they were able to stay alive. But one of the High Templar already get taken out. 2 more are brought down the ramp here to enforce. And it looks like finally a storm does go off, but I think a lot of damage, maybe too much damage, has been done. But Bisu, he's found the mutas over at the top left. We're actually seeing the first-person view of him micro. And if you actually want to see some live Bisu, he's playing on Africa. I think his account is playing right now. But we're focusing on the MBC Survivor League. This is the 8th MSL 2006, May 23rd. On the map, 8:15. If you guys are coming in just right now, this has been quite an exciting game. We're about to reach the 20-minute mark. Lurkers, Hydralisks are pressuring everywhere. Mutas didn't pan out as well for Silver as he tried to switch over to that mute attack and do some deathly pressure towards Bisu, who he realized had no anti-air at the time. But now it looks like the dominating air scene is in the favor of Bisu, who has so many Corsairs available to him. The Lurker morphing on the bottom of the ramp, it's going to prevent any units from moving out too. And now he's just going to put a blockade on there with the underground spikes. It's going to require High Templar to allow him to bust out here. So Bisu, he doesn't have all his tech buildings over on that right side of the map. He actually built his Templar archives over at the bottom left, right south of that mineral line at his 7th 7 o'clock expansion. So he might not lose everything. It's about the necessary production facilities. But here's a swarm of 4 Dark Templar. Can I say a swarm when it's a Protoss flock? But I will say indeed, as the Dark Templar do pressure on top of these drones, it looks like tons of damage is coming done. Is Bisu carving his way back in here? This is like watching pumpkins on Halloween, and the drones do fall down. He's actually focusing that spawning pool. Not quite as necessary. He might want to actually take down the Hydralisk den first, but there's so much going on inside the main base of Bisu too. Can he hold in here? You saw Silver bite his lip as he realizes he needs to get more damage done as quickly as possible. It's going to be really hard to take out these Dark Templar, even though he did morph Hydralisk inside of the main base, and Overlords have come in to provide detection here. A last swarm of Zealots are going to be inside of his Nexus location. Can he push out and maintain his main base here? He needs to go for an epic defense. Meanwhile, Corsairs are trying to pick off Overlords. Is this the moment where Bisu realizes that Ser DT is the viable build that he has to go for here? Can he even win, or will he get knocked out of the first MSL that he's ever going to play in his first game of the day? So looks like the lair is going to be taken down. Not even Hive Tech worked up to as we reach almost the 22-minute mark in this game. Hydralisk and Lurkers still threatening the bottom here, but there's still no damage at the 6 o'clock base. I don't even know if Silver has noticed that the 6 o'clock location is there. Meanwhile, the main base over at the 7 o'clock is still running functionally here, and he's going to have to rebuild production facilities. The gateway count needs to increase over at the bottom left. Oh, but Silver's received tons of damage too. He does have a decent army supply, and that's kind of what he has going for him, is those Lurkers. But he hasn't taken the 12 o'clock base. He does have the natural and the main of the top left part of the map. And it looks like the doomsday has been met for Bisu on this right side, as he will officially lose his main. The Citadel of Doom, not quite as important anymore though. He doesn't need to research those leg enhancements, and the Templar Archives is built, as I said, at the other location. Meanwhile, DTs are just going absolutely raving mad right now, and he might be able to have done enough damage to fight himself back in the game. 2 base Protoss versus 3 base Zerg. That is the situation right now. The Cybernetics core is down, and Dragoons cannot be made for Bisu anymore. It looks like the High Templars are getting thirsty to throw down some storms on his Zerg opponent. And what's happening over at the 6 o'clock base? It looks like there's a lot of action going on here, but instead, no, the Overlords, while they looked like they were gearing towards that 6 o'clock, have moved down to the main base that Bisu has established over at the 7 o'clock location. And these High Templar, he should morph them into Archons. I know that storms are pretty useful here, but the fact is, he hasn't been able to get storms off in time on these Hydralisks, and they're doing way too much damage on the infrastructure of Bisu. But I guess he's going to wait and hopefully try and get a storm off again here, trying to micro these prods back towards the bottom location. The minerals are not flush anymore. It looks like he's going to be drying out very soon, and it would be a one-base mining situation for Bisu, while drops are still available for Silver, so he's really not feeling any danger about having to take out that 6 o'clock location after he does take out this main base, if he can here. The Lurkers are morphing. They do have that plus 10 armor, and it's going to be really hard for these Zealots to try and pick them off. They're trying to focus down that one Lurker as best as possible here. And is that cannon going to be enraged with detection here? But a lot of probes do die off. Bisu's in a ton of trouble here. Now the High Templar, as they did stay in their High Templar form, fortunately, even without the Observer, can storm here. Did he actually? Okay. It looked like he may have misstormed, but that was a Lurker that did die off. The screen looking a little bit fuzzy here, but this is a 2006 game, and this is the 2006 style of video graphics that you're going to have to deal with when you watch these games. So the Zealots do move in. An Observer is finally there, and pretty much two-shots them, kills them with a 1-2 punch. And Hydralisks are still kind of focusing down the buildings inside of Bisu's main base also. It's going to be funny as they try and take those final 2 cannons. I think they will die off, and Zealots were kind of hiding behind there too, along with the probe. So Bisu would be able to kill that off. And is that a Manor Hatchery over at the natural base? I think that Silver's toying with Bisu at this point, realizing that he's got the upper hand. I don't see any other reason why he'd build his hatchery inside that natural, if not to be a Manor Hatchery. So we're going to say that the BM is being laid out by the Pantech player Silver at this time. Meanwhile, Bisu, he still has a ton of Corsairs, but they cannot morph into some sort of silly ground unit and do their attacks towards the ground. They can only maintain air control, and he needs to constantly try and pick off Overlords if he wants any sort of comeback into this game. And oh, what's going to happen with that Lurker? Is he going to be able to pick it off? A storm does come down, but it's going to take 2 storms. Oh man, Bisu worried me for a second because storms actually do not stack. So he laid down that second storm, but just late enough so that way he could use the double storm to kill off that Lurker. And a storm blanket indeed was laid out for that unit. So Bisu does push down to that natural, which is minerals only, but he does have a substantial force here and drops down storms. He actually took out a decent amount of Hydralisks, but those were just, suicide High Templars at that time. Nothing else to defend with them. And Bisu realizing that there is a hatchery down there, I'm sure that he's a little bit frustrated at the pace of this game and the way it's gone for him. After so much preparation from both these players, you can really tell when the game has turned the page and gotten out of their control, hasn't really gone through the game plan that they predicted here. Now drones are pushing over towards that right side, maybe gonna just start mining over there because they do need bases to mine at. He could always build a hatchery back inside of his original main base at the 1 o'clock here, but here comes the Dune drops, and how many cannons can hold on here? Will he be able to hang in as the Corsairs try and pick off all the Overlords available to him? But I think the damage is too late. Bisu has no more infrastructure at the 6 o'clock location. He cannot defend it. He can't lift units over. There's no Nidus Canal for Protoss. And unfortunately, he's going to have to rely on a ton of Zealots once again to try and take out the Zerg force, which that's a ton of Zealots. That's 2 control groups of Zealots is quite a bunch indeed here. And along with those High Templars, he's going to try and move out with his force again, maybe to that natural base, or maybe to the top left, which is the heart of the Zerg force at this time. But that is a lot of Hydralisks that have been produced for Silver. He's looking like he's still in this great position here, finding a nice location, but a huge storm coming off. Silver's got a micro back really quickly here, and 5 High Templar are chasing back these units. Is Bisu going to be able to do it here? Can he hold on? A lot of, there were about 6 or 7 Hydralisks that I'm sure Silver would really want to bring back into the battle here. But they're unfortunately stuck on the high ground as the Overlords would have to move back over and lift them off that island portion of the map. This is the map 8.15.3. And it is a 4-player map with a 6 and 12 o'clock island expansions here. And it's a wonder why Silver at this point hasn't dropped a drone up to that high ground location when he knows that Bisu doesn't have shuttles and cannot prevent that expansion any longer here. So moving over towards the right, that's not a lot of sunken colonies. 4 will die off really quickly with the number of Zealots that Bisu has. Can he come back into this game? This is absolutely insane now. As he pushes in, there's no High Templar, or there's no Hydralisk coming in from the back. And what are those Lurkers doing? It looks like Hydra's Lurkers are moving in from the left side. Maybe they're going to try and choke in Bisu after he ends up cleaning up these forces here. 1 Archon does come in here too, which would clean up any Zerglings, but I haven't seen Zerglings since the first 2 minutes of the game, so that's not really something that Bisu does have to worry about. He cleared out the mining and needs to push back over to the left to try and apply pressure once again on Silver, but Silver's going for the counterattack. It looks like he can move in towards this natural base. I'm calling it the natural because Bisu has basically relocated his main over to that 7 o'clock and taken the natural mineral only, but these Lurks are coming in here way too quickly with Hydralisk support, and the Protes are going to have to get pulled immediately. They did not get killed off from the Lurkers, so that's one blessing that Bisu can hold on to, and a nice storm does come down, doesn't clear out the Lurker. It's going to require 1 more, and Bisu misses it. He misses the Lurker with his second storm, and that High Templar is going to be useless until it can regain its energy. 30 minutes into the game now, Hydralisk taking down that natural. No mining existing inside of the main base except for the gas, and Bisu only has his army left. He may have to go for a base trade scenario. The infrastructure for that natural base of Silver is not that great. He doesn't have any buildings blocking it. You like to see a few more hatcheries and evolution chambers out there to prevent the units from quickly going into the sunken colonies here, but it still may be enough. A storm actually may be doing more damage to his Zealots than the actual units of Silver here, but he does clean up the sunken colonies here. And this base trade, are you kidding me? Can Bisu do it? He's got a lot of High Templar. He can morph them into Archons if he needs to, and that might be the situation. He's going off the Storm here, and Storm will get of that Lurker. One more Storm, and it will be able to clear it out, and now he's going to be able to push up on top of that ramp. What does Silver have? Is there any economy left for him at all? The Corsairs pressuring still on those Overlords to try and present any more production from Silver. And this would be a huge comeback for Bisu after seeing all that pressure inside of his main base at the bottom right, losing it. But Silver, on the other hand, he's taken so much damage from Bisu at the same time. So the Zealots move in to the top. And, oh, I see what they're doing. They're trying to take out the Observer. Because if he can kill off that one Observer, Bisu doesn't have a robotics facility. He cannot attack the Lurkers. In Bisu, he has to make sure he keeps his Observer alive. Meanwhile, there is another expansion over at that bottom 6 o'clock location. So very smart for Silver indeed. But it looks like, did he keep that Observer alive? He can't pressure in here until he can push away the Observer and the Spore Colonies. Because that's exactly what Silver wanted to force down here. And it looks like Silver was able to hold on. Bisu lost too much of his army engaging inside of that base. Oh my goodness. What a crazy game, guys. As we watch Bisu's first MSL game, and that was going to be against Silver. And that was such a climactic ending at the end there. Silver was able to get that natural base so effectively he was able to get that island base at the 6, and that's pretty much was going to be able to seal it up for him as he was able to defend it. There were no shuttles, and Bisu's army was able to dry out. So that's going to be the end of Bisu's run in the 8th MSL. This is the MBC Survivor 8th, 2006, May 23rd, Bisu versus Silver on 8/15. Thank you guys for watching that with me. That's going to be the end of the Bisu hour, as pretty much it took up the entire hour that I had available to me. A nice long 31-minute game, and a great one indeed. That will go down in the history books as one of the great PVZs. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys can take care and enjoy the rest of your day, as it is a Wednesday, and have a good afternoon. Goodbye.